Welcome, Marilene Ribeiro. Really excited to have a chat with you today about your work and your practice and the ecosystem of you as an artist more holistically. For everyone who's joining us, my name is Louise Fedotov-Clements. I'm the director of Photoworks, and Marilene fits into a program of digital residencies that we run throughout the year, where we invite artists to share about their practice, about recent works. It's based on the roots of Instagram takeovers, but we've expanded and developed and changed it so that we enter into the artist studio. We ask the artists to talk about the books, their influences, and to have some live elements of understanding kind of the multi-dimensional aspects of being and working as a visual artist. And so today we have Marilene with us. Marilene is born in Belo Horizonte, a Brazilian artist based in the UK and working all over the world. And we came across Marilene's work through Earth Photo that we collaborate with the Royal Geographical Society, Forestry England and Parker Harris on this incredible international open call for climate engaged projects. And there's a number of awards that are part of that program. And we invited Marilene to be our Photoworks award winner for that. So Marilene is going to talk us through your recent projects and your work overall, but just as a very brief introduction, you identify as a visual artist whose practice is focused on contemporary issues, namely the environmental and human rights agendas, decolonial gaze from the global south. And your projects have engaged with political agency of photography and the role of image-based media in society. You've received training from Magnum Photos, Central St Martin's, University of Arts, UK, and you have a PhD in creative arts from University of Creative Arts. You've been nominated as one of the 12 women photographers to watch worldwide from the PH Museum, and a whole wonderful list of incredible awards as well. Very active artist, and we're really proud to be working with you. Really interested in your engagement with Photo Feminist, platform dedicated to promote work of female photographers from across Latin America and the Caribbean. Your engagement with Women Photograph, Fast Forward Women in Photography, and also your academic work in terms of Voices of Latin America, and you're a co-founder of Agnitio, Change Through Photography, a collective project with a range of different artists to look at providing skills to underrepresented groups in order to use image making as a tool to pursue social change agendas in local communities, specifically in Brazil. So a very brief overview. Really proud and excited to welcome Marilene, who is currently taking over our Instagram feed with a range of projects from Open Fire, Dead Water, Photo Rituals for Disappearance. So the plan today is to, if you're happy to introduce your recent projects in a bit more detail, and we'll illustrate through you'll share your screen and share some images as well for us to refer to. And then we'll go into a bit of a Q&A as well. Does that sound fine? Welcome, Marilene.
Thank you, Louise, for the introduction, and thank you for all the care of Photoworks and all the team with this opportunity of working together with you for this month. And for this opportunity of been sharing my work with Photoworks audience and the UK, people in the UK and abroad as well. I'm gonna speak briefly about, as we were talking about, like kind of selecting some works for me to be talking about briefly. I've selected like the 3 works that are currently on my image gallery at Photoworks online platform, so that people could have a bit of like a glimpse of what is behind the scene, or about the context that drove me into making these 3 works. I I might start talking about Open Fire, which was the work who was awarded the Earth Photoworks Award this year. And then we can move, to the other two ones, which are kind of sort of complementary, I would say, in terms of the advocacy and the kind of claims they come up with. So I'm going to start by sharing my screen here for us to see a bit of photo Open Fire.
And where are you calling in from today?
I'm from between Hampshire and Surrey, southern England. There we go. Let's see if it's sharing. There we go. So, can you see it like properly, Louise, like kind of the page?
Yeah.
So just to speak briefly about Open Fire, in Open Fire, I use medium format analog photography and intervention, and I interweave these imagery that I create through the intervention with fire on the analog photographic films with some insights that I have through the making of the work, and also with some new source material that I have come across throughout the time that I was thinking about developing this work and also actually developing this work. Open Fire, it starts, so it starts, I think it's kind of formed here. Let me try to bring it to the Google Chrome, perhaps, because I think here you're not going to see the image like quite properly. Just going to stop sharing quickly. I'm going to move to the other one. No, I think we're going to have like a better opportunity of seeing it. Cool. There we go. Yeah, much better now. So this is the online platform that currently hosts the work, in which people can kind of interact with both images and also the audios and text that are part of each piece, each art piece. So Open Fire, as I was saying, it starts when in Brazil and also in Latin America, and now it's all around the world, actually, this situation of the destructive fires that have been done a lot of damage to our immaterial, kind of untangible heritage, which is about the culture, our cultural heritage and our natural heritage. So in Brazil and in Latin America, apart from the consequence of climate crisis, the amount of fires and the magnitude of fires we've been facing are pretty much related to political conflicts. So usually fire is employed, like historically in my country, for instance, fire is employed sort of as a weapon to conquer territories, and for mainly the agribusiness industry or the commodities industry to advance and to expand their territories over usually territories, indigenous people's territories, or also like a natural reserves or place of natural kind of natural relevance in terms of biodiversity and water and vegetation. I think lately people are over the world, like kind of all across the world, are more aware about the implications of those aggressive fires, because it's been on the news about the fires on the Amazon. So perhaps you might understand, people who don't live in Brazil or don't have this experience from Brazil, they might understand a bit better what kind of fire I'm talking about. And with these in mind, on 2019, we had these very impressive, I would say, and outrageous situation in which we had something which was lately called the Day of Fire. This was a situation in which some rural producers in the northern Brazil, in the Amazon, they decided to organize a movement to set fire to parts of the forest in order to kind of claim for their rights to be deforesting further, in order to have the cattle ranchers, to have the cattle ranches and the soya or any other kind of commodity plantations expanded in their territory. And this was kind of striking because it was kind of an open aggression to the areas of forest that were still standing and had like loads of animals and people living in there. And these kind of struck me. I felt like kind of, and everyone from Brazil, I think everyone in Brazil were like kind of striking. It was a striking situation that we had to deal with and how to respond to that. So basically, open fire comes as a response to that situation I was facing in my country. And what I did was basically I decided to sort of mimic the same aggression, trying to convey these future landscape, which would be left if you would be facing these kind of yearly destruction that the fire kind of triggers in the territories. So I try to kind of think about a future, how would be first like to have these future landscapes to deal with, in which the majority of its value is lost, and we're not going to have anything to remember because it's been sort of deformed, warped, and kind of taken away in terms of their value, both in terms of biodiversity, life, culture, and memories. So I decided to to do these interventions. I went to these, I selected some places in Brazil, some sites which were like officially acknowledged as sites for high relevance in conservation. Then I went to those places with my camera. I took the pictures. I photographed those places, different areas in different parts of Brazil, and eventually I burned them. And as you can also see from the walk, like you can have a bit of an idea about the context of each one of those fires by the text that accompany them, which if you go to the platform, you can also hear on like narrated on my own voice, which I think conveys as well like this idea about the being my perspective, being my own perspective, my own experience, and my own concern about that situation, that political, ecological, and yes, social situation that was happening in Brazil, which is not like just a reality for Brazil. It's happening like in many other countries of Latin American countries. So I thought it was important to make it look as something that it's of global concern. It's not just about local reality, but it's something that's been replicated all in many different countries based on these way of business as usual of the commodity industry mainly. So I will stop sharing here, and I don't know if you want us to move to next walk, or if you wanted to make some comments about this one so that we can wrap about it and go to the next.
Yeah, so I was just going to ask about I suppose how does the dynamic of your work, did you make the work whilst you were living in Brazil, or were you seeing it from afar and felt really motivated to kind of reconnect, or is your kind of relationship with Brazil as fluid, and you're practicing working there kind of frequently?
Yeah, because I work from as you said, from different parts of the world. So, but my story, my experience, and my kind of many of the aspects that I'm really engaged in, my kind of contributing to change probably through my practice are in Brazil. So these where I was born, I live there. Is the place that I really like. I'm really attached to. So, and the place that I probably I can talk about better because is where I've been living, isn't it? So that's why I think, and I think it and on the other hand, it's a part of the world, but it tells so much about things that are happening in many other parts as well. So usually I use my country as a window to speak about broader and contentious subjects that tackle, that happen across the planet.
Yeah, that comes across really strongly. And your practice seems really really diverse in terms of its kind of like materiality and aspects, and this is obviously kind of analog, and you're burning, and you're working with layers and juxtaposing images together as well. Was this kind of how did you run into this technique, or is it kind of like reacting to the context that you were responding to?
Yeah. When I came up with this idea about burning, I knew two things. I knew that I would need like medium format because I wanted to know exactly, not exactly because fire is is something difficult to kind of control completely, especially in a small area. But I did know that I wanted something like a kind of a material on which I would be able to see what I was doing. So that's why I chose medium format, because I said, okay, if I work with like 35 millimeters, for instance, it would be impossible for me to do what I want, because I don't want to destroy the whole thing. I want people to be still able to recognize a bit of what it was before, so a bit of the image, I wanted it to be still in there. But on the other hand, but at the same time, I also wanted people to understand that that landscape or that space, kind of in its kind of bigger meaning, that space was kind of has lost its capacity of being a whole thing, or being a full thing. So that's why I wanted like something that was as big as medium format. But at the same time, I was proposing to myself to work with a material, to work with a technique and a process that I have never worked with before. So I kind of welcomed myself at the same time to the experimentation, which I think it's something very strong in my practice. I've always kind of tried to think about the process and the process and the final piece probably, but more about the process that could encapsulate and my idea and what I want to communicate to the beholder eventually. And based on these, I kind of try to make my path to the technique they're going to be using, even if this technique is something that's going to be, it will challenge me, it will be new for me to deal with. And this happened with Open Fire, was like the first time that I was trying to convey, to communicate something that to me it was very strong. And in a way that would go through using a technique that I wouldn't know still where I would go, what kind of image I would have at the end. And then I had to learn through the process. I used many tests like that. Print test. I use like kind of film tests for me to be testing, until eventually I managed to learn what kind of results I would have with different kind of fires that I would use and different kind of positions, what side of the film, the photographic film, I would need to use for me to get to that result or not the other result, how to stop the process when I didn't want it to carry on burning. Then this was like an amazing process of learning through making, like a research process, I would say, that was quite enriching to me as a practitioner and as a researcher as well.
Yeah, so it's like a very collaborative process with the fire as well, isn't it? And kind of finding a way to control that dynamic and kind of reach a result that is maybe unpredictable but controllable somehow as well. And also echoes some of the tactics that are being used by people who are obviously
That,
many of the fires become out of control and absolutely devastating to landscapes, but it's yeah, adds a kind of authentic dynamic to the narrative of the work as well, isn't it?
yeah, and it's nice to come up with kind of a result that is very unique as well, because previous like works that have been done using like burning negatives and doing things like that, they kind of people did the artists or the people who employ them, they did this like, in a more kind of, they just set fire and let it go, and whatever was the result, this was the result. And in whereas in my case, I was controlling the aesthetics and the result I wanted, all based on what I was learning as I would be doing the tests, which I think is interesting because then the results, I could come up with the kind of different results in terms of aesthetics, in terms of the shapes, and in terms of the color, based on these kind of these improvement, I would say improvement of the technique. I wouldn't say like improvement because it's quite difficult to kind of have everything under control, but at least about color, shape, when I wanted the bubbles or when I didn't want the bubbles and I wanted just, and the ashes as well. At some point, I had the ashes attaching to the gelatin and I said, oh God, now I have like a black spot. But then I think it's nice because when this show is the open fire show, it's still on. They kind of just kind of open it until the end of the month now at the West Downs Gallery, and it's nice because I've been doing some visiting kind of visitors tours there with some people, and it's interesting that when they people realize that what they are seeing, the color and the shapes and it's the actual result of the fire on the gelatin and on the
Mm.
motion, because many of those they got amazed when they said like, oh, I thought this was post-production, like kind of Photoshop. He said no, 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 this is not Photoshop, it's like the actual result of the fire on the physicality of the film.
Yeah, because the imagery is very it's colors within the kind of palette of fire now, and it's yeah, it's incredible to see what you can what the fire does to that material and how that translates into the photography. Um, and they're a really compelling set of images. I was going to just ask you also about the kind of the social change agenda within the work and your practice overall, and kind of the intent, I suppose, apart from obviously kind of through the aesthetic and abstract, but also the rooted dialogues in the challenging context that the work's been born out of, how that's been working through the kind of sharing of the work. Obviously, you have this gallery online and you've got the exhibition physically now, and there's been kind of a number of months since you've been sharing the work. How do you feel like the kind of traction of engagement is happening?
Every time I kind of, as most of my work, if not all my work, it's based on kind of advocating for either human rights or environmental kind of issues. I think that it's implicit in everything when I start making it, that it's implicit that I wanted to reach the public realm so that it can start or provoke a conversation about those subjects. So every time I start like sharing a new work that was made with this special purpose of like bringing about perhaps a new perspective on a topic that I consider like of a high importance in terms of contemporary world. I find it really beautiful when I start like having the feedback from the audience in different ways. For Open Fire, I've been lucky enough of having had the opportunity of sharing it in different environments. Yeah, like from Argentina, Peru, and Spain, like United States and UK and Brazil. for different audiences, and it's nice. It's quite important to me to see that in different ways the work kind of resonates its message on these people that have been in contact with it. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but what I feel that
Yeah.
different audiences with different purposes, like for instance, let's say like people who went to the Photoville festival in the United States and saw the work as a big, like a big stand, like square thing that on installed like outdoors.
Yeah.
They had some feedback which of course were different from the people who went to see and to read about it on the alternative photography women's group in the United States, which were more interested in the experimental aspect of it and there is aesthetic results. On the other hand, like people from REAST project, for instance, which is this Latin American and Spanish platform dedicated to photography, when they did the interview about the work and wrote about the work on that platform, of course, they were more interested in the political and the advocacy aspect of the work. So these for me is very, very important. Now with Photoworks, we kind of putting everything together because the Photoworks audience like are interested, as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I understand that we have at Photoworks, I think you guys have like people that are interested in the aesthetics, people who are interested in the concept, people who are interested in the political context, and people who are interested in the I would say activist voice as well of the photographic work. So it's just like really, really important to have the work circulating in these different kind of realms and spaces, because
Yeah.
the work exists to create dialogue, to kind of to propose this dialogue and to take this dialogue further.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate that. And yeah, you're right with that audience as well. And I'm always fascinated by the effectiveness of activism and or the journey that goes on as well, because obviously we have kind of like when the work is new and then how that kind of transects across time and kind of the different types of ways of marking the effectiveness of the impact of those works and kind of tracking that over the the lifetime of the artist and so on. So it's just I suppose personal fascination as well. Asking that question. Do you want to move on to your next project? Is that okay? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So I'm going to speak briefly as well about the project that it's just been out into the world, which is a photo book, and which will be launched officially for the first time in the coming weeks at the Lisbon Photo Book Fair. Will be, yeah, let me just find it here. I'm gonna try to play the video of the book, Louise, but if we think that due to connection issues or something like that, like it's not working well, would you let me know? Then I can move to the PDF.
Yeah, sure. Let's see.
Okay, because
Fingers
I think,
crossed.
yeah, it's just because it's an artist book, so it's got so many elements and inserts and things that I think that add to the conversation, that it's nice if we could see like almost the actual object, art object. So let me stop sharing here and let me go back to the share. So let's see. Can you see that's full screen, or do you want me to move it to full screen?
Yeah, I think it's going to work. It's looking good so far. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for photo rituals for disappearance, it's as all my works, like it starts with my personal perspective on a personal experience with something, and then kind of this takes the shape of an art piece in the end, which aims to communicate about, as I said to you, like topics and subjects that are related to human rights or rights of nature. In this case, this was a different, this had kind of a different path, because this started with a kind of a very personal, a very like, very personal experience of love and death that I had back in 2020, in 2019, 2020. And then eventually, as I started using photographic and performative methods as a sort of a cathartic way of coming into terms with the situation I found myself in, I eventually noticed that I ended up kind of creating sort of very female intimacy rituals with some friends and my sister, who helped me to carry out the ideas that I had to kind of use the material, the objects that I end up using to make the performances on each kind of performative piece, which eventually I understood that was actually each one of these pieces were actually a ritual, a kind of female ritual, which aimed the healing, aimed like to heal my soul from that experience. And then I realized that all these things that are usually done by women over the centuries, which has to do, all the things that have to do, at the end of the day, they have to do with healing powers that we have inherited from the women that came before us. They have been kind of condemned and persecuted, and especially because they've been named as kind of witchcraft, hag. And I said, okay, in that case, I'm gonna create a work that basically celebrate these powers instead of condemning them and stigmatizing them. I want to celebrate these powers as kind of a counterpoint, and it's kind of a response to this stigmatization that we have lived over time, which is at the end of the day based on the very patriarchal and very misogynic perception of it's been like being a woman is about. So I said, okay, so if I'm going to celebrate our healing powers, if I'm going to celebrate this way of being a woman, of like our kind of female essence, then we are talking about witch hunt, which happened like in the past, but it carries on happening in the present time. Like the United Nations has reported recently, like an increase in murders of women accused of witchcraft is in different parts of the world, you know. So it's something that carries on and is a reflection of how you understand women and how we still kind of very attached to these patriarchal patterns. So I said, okay, I want something that's going to be a counter story, you know. It's going to be a counterpoint to these. It's going to be a celebration. So I'm going to use the same object that women have been using over time to pass on their knowledge, which has to do with the recipe books, which has to do with the recipe books that our great-great-grandmothers have like written, and they pass the recipe to the next generation, which pass the next generation, and so on. And this is also this also has to do with the imaginary that we've got of the witch from like children's books, from like kind of fairy tales. They always have to do with this recipe ritual book, big one, that contains all the information or the knowledge of the ancestors. So I said, that will be a photo book. Then it will be like an artist book that is a book because it's a recipe book. It will be like a ritual book, so that I can pass on into the next generations, into the next the women that gonna kind of take it further to their places, or to all the places that I myself wouldn't be able to reach. As it's been over time, we've been doing these as women, resisting these persecution. And yeah, and the book is about that. And it will be launched now at the Lisbon Photo Book Fair. So I would like to invite everyone who is around or can be in Lisbon on the last weekend of November to join us. I'm going to be talking a bit about how was the process of making it, like how, we made especially kind of how everything in the book was created, what the concept behind every material you used, and the size of the book, the page, and all this technical and kind of creative process information regarding the creative process behind the book. I don't know. I think I should stop now and
or you can leave it playing maybe, and we can talk alongside.
Oh, I thought it was playing. It's not playing on your screen.
No, we can keep it playing.
Okay, sorry.
Rather than stop. Yeah, that's what I meant. Because it's wonderful to kind of have insight to the book, and the dynamics of the physicality of the book is really intriguing as well. Can you say a little bit about the inserts that you were just working through?
Okay. So the first insert of the book, which is an illustration that was made for the purpose of the book, it has to do with the natural elements, which are kind of the essence. I think they are, that's the essence of every recipe. Like every recipe, we need ingredients, and the women, especially in the early modern times, when they had like the recipe books, they would share the same recipe book, because on that at that time we didn't have medicine as we understand it now. Then basically the women at the time, they would need to cook, but at the same time to be able to make an ointment, for instance, that could cure, like an eye drop that could heal illness as well, like some conditions, health conditions. So what I found fascinating when I was like researching about this, and I found this library in which they've got everything digitized, and some piece of the book of my book have got like these as well, acknowledge this information. I was fascinated when I was browsing the original books from like 1674, 1675, the original one, and I would see like kind of how to make a cordial, and at the same time, then you'd pass the page. Next page would be like how to make an eye drop to heal like an eye or a wound, to make kind of an ointment that could heal a wound. So these things kind of really made me want to kind of transpose these from the original 17th century books, which was the time when witch hunting in Europe was really, really strong, a strong movement that devastated so many lives, to the book, to my contemporary book. And at the same time, I said, okay, but hang on a minute. These persecution and these practices, they are carrying on today, nowadays. And in Brazil, let me go back here so that we can understand a bit of what I'm saying. In Brazil, we've got, and they are kind of happening in different ways. All around the globe, they happen somehow linked to this kind of divination activities that mostly women do, and which has got to do with the tarot readers and people who kind of offer advice based on being able to see the future. But in Brazil, we've got this amazing culture which dates we inherited it. It's a mix. Brazil is a very mixed. It's a very mixed country in terms of cultures and colors and everything. It's very diverse. And one of the things that we inherited from the African diaspora that went to Brazil are these religions that had to do with a different way of understanding the natural world and all the worlds that kind of it's a kind of a metaphysical thing. And they've got these practices in which acknowledge a lot of nature. So they've got kind of different deities that kind of are beautiful, or have like, they've got like these kind of god, kind of godness and goddesses attitudes and features, but at the same time they've got human features as well. They can be envy of the other one, you know. It's amazing. And on the at the same time, we've got these leaflets that even nowadays, these are all leaflets that I collected in Brazil when I was in Brazil. They are contemporary. Then basically, we're talking about contemporary, how do I say, contemporary women is still working with these metaphysical world, you know, and trying to connect ordinary people to this metaphysical world. And they basically sell their jobs by passing around their kind of leaflets, which are basically advertisements for the services that they offer. And usually they offer, which is the most famous in Brazil, is the slogan. It's not a slogan, but the most famous work that they offer, service that they offer in Brazil. They kind of name it like, I bring your loved one within 3 days. So people go there so that they can have the people that they loved back to the relationship once they split or something like that. It's a very famous service that these women do in Brazil, and they're mainly women. So when we see I'm going to pause here. When you see these leaflets, for instance, we're going to see that most of the names of the people, because these are the actual leaflets, of course, they are facsimiles, but they are based on the actual ones that were kind of distributed in Brazil like last year or the year before. So I wanted to link these women to the women of the 17th century, you know. They are still kind of bringing these two worlds together. The world of healing and the world of working with these magical powers at the end of the day. So that's why I brought all these elements that I think needs to be, I
think it's incredibly interesting to make the leaps across time, isn't it? But also internationally, kind of drawing threads, kind of commonality of threads across boundaries in relation to women, but also these kind of specificities in Brazil as well. And you mentioned Mexico in the description too, but I think also just to say, I think it's you know, globally with contemporary cultures, generally speaking, many women are losing, or human beings are losing their connection with nature and the possibilities of kind of transmutation, or the ways that our relationship with plants can be practically integrated into our lives. And it's kind of really telling of contemporary society around these leaflets that you found here, and how it's still kind of visible, but I think it's also fascinating how you as an artist kind of working it through in a kind of autobiographical way as well. And did you have collaborators in the images themselves, or is it or your body or others too?
Absolutely. That's why this is the illustration that I said, and it comes with my ritual. Then basically the first one, that's just, if you want to replicate the ritual, you can replicate it. It's written there, as it would be in like a witch book in our imaginary. Like they would open the book and they would have like, oh, this is the ritual for us to make us these appear. And yeah, all the rituals were made, rituals, performances, I would say, they were made with the intention of course, this is a mix of autobiography with fiction, but the potential intention of each ritual in this book would be to make the protagonist disappear. So as the protagonist would have the powers to using the natural elements, and yeah, in this case, for instance, it's with like sunflower seeds. By going through these special ritual with that special element from nature, as you said, like then I really praise the herbalists, and this is kind of bringing this legacy of the herbalists, into the work. So hoping that eventually the protagonist, which has got these special powers, would disappear. But of course, it's about a story of love and a story of 15 years of commitment with someone who eventually we know that it would be difficult for the protagonist to disappear. Then I try again with a different element that populated our lives. So that's why the book is divided into chapters. So here, as you can see, this is one of the recipe books of the Shakespeare Folgers Gallery library. We are in which they would have this chapter. This lady would have this chapter about ointments, and before this was like bacon, like the previous chapter, which is like fascinating, isn't it? Like they would have everything in their book: how to feed their families, how to heal the kind of the children and the partners, and also how to look after the environment they would be sharing it with the loved ones. So in this case, for instance, you use like different element from nature as well, and it's always like creating, which is some flowers. So I really wanted to bring back to kind of do this homage to nature as well as a provider of these ingredients for healing.
Yeah, it's incredibly powerful. And how did you come to the design of did you design it yourself, or were you collaborating with a designer collaborator, and is it self-published?
It was published. It's published by the Act Phrases, which is a publishing house that works with Agua Libre's studio, which is a Mexican-based studio, which is specialized in handmade for artist books. I really wanted to work with someone because I wanted this to be a proper, it's a book that carries all this legacy in it. So I really wanted to kind of to be able to incorporate all these elements in the way that I thought would make justice to the women who came before us and the ones that would be after us. So I collaborated with this studio in Mexico, and we worked out the design together. And responding to your previous question, all these rituals were made with other women. Then it's been a collective kind of almost a sabbath, I would say, eventually, because we are all together. We need to plan the time of the day that we wanted to do the things, what we'll be using, and the season, for instance, for the dragon fruit ritual, for instance, this one. We would need to have the season for this to happen, because otherwise we don't have the dragon fruit, like to use. And it was kind of all these, and some rituals like this one, people would be naked doing that. So we need to find like a safe space to do that as well. So it was almost like it was a proper ritual happening, like, me photographing or someone photographing me, and someone pretended it was me, it was myself, because then it was a beautiful exchange that happened on the act of photographing as well, and planning and videoing.
Yeah, incredibly performative as well, isn't it? And how I suppose you must still be resonating with this work. It's still very fresh, and you're kind of obviously driving forward to sharing the book. And is it something that you were able to kind of underlying interests and kind of life practice that you had throughout your life, or is it something that you've been able to kind of fine tune through the practice of doing this book as well?
Say it again, sorry, Louise.
So
I've missed the track.
Sorry. Yeah, no, it's okay. I'll reframe. So you're still very fresh with this work as well, and it kind of feels very, very much that it's still resonating in a very fulfilling way for you too. And what kind of life and work reflect each other, and how does that shape your future path, I suppose, of how you how you embody this work and your life connected to that too.
I think this book was, yeah, as it starts in a cathartic way, I think, and now that I see it like kind of bringing so much more like than just my own experience, it brings like this collective, like historic experience. I do hope that, I mean, of course, it impacted me a lot, and the act of making it, not just making the photographs, but kind of putting them together, how to communicate these. I don't want to be speaking about my own experience only. I want to be speaking about this transcendental experience of women in our society, you know. So at the same time that I was making it and putting it together, of course, I was researching about all that meant the witch hunt process that we faced in Europe, and how it resonated in Latin America, you know, because then I started researching about how people from, in our case, Portugal, which we were a colony of Portugal. So how Portugal brought these witch hunt to Brazil, when Brazil is a place, as I said to you before, has got so much of a mixed and diverse form of understanding religion, understanding practices. And then, of course, I started studying it, and I got horrified with all the things that I read, you know, and then these taught me a lot. I mean, through my research, to make the work meaningful and to kind of claim the thing that I wanted to claim in a proper way. It was a long process of learning as well, like reading like contemporary writers like Silvia Federici, like reading like even like another historian, like a very famous historian in the UK, and even like BBC Channel 4, like Witch podcast, you know, who was out this year. So it's all very relevant to how I'm gonna take everything that I've learned from this work forward in, and it resonates. Of course, it resonates. It will resonate in my works in the future.
Yeah, that's incredible. Would love to see the book one day. How many did you create? Obviously, it looks like a very intensive process to craft each book.
Yeah, we made like a limited edition of 100,
Mhm.
because they are very like, as you can see, they're very like peculiar. It's got like all this kind of like handmade feeling as well, because I think it needed to have it, you know. It needs
Yeah.
to be something that's handmade, because artisan style thing, because this is how we've been seeing the recipe books in real life over time.
Yeah, yeah. And do you imagine presenting the book as you know, in terms of how it translates into public situations like exhibitions or so on? Is the book the most perfect way to present the work if you've been thinking ahead like this?
The work actually, it's got videos as well, and it's got different all it's got the leaflets, it's as such as well, like as proper elements, and it's
Yeah.
got some more other things. They are very interactive, and they can that yeah, I've been talking to another curator for us perhaps to present it as an installation, because as with all these elements, the book itself, the other elements, the leaflets, as like proper objects on themselves as well, and the videos and all the material that can kind of be blown up in different kind of size, and on the wall, on the floor, you know, because the ritual has got to do with this circle thing, and the circle is very acknowledged throughout the work as well, because the circle is, I've learned as well from my research that the circle is kind of a very crucial, the center is the circle, is the center of the energy and the rituals of the healing and
Yeah,
everything.
extraordinarily symbolic as well. Um,
So we intended to present it as an installation, and the book, yeah, I hope I can also launch it next year in the UK at some point.
yeah, look forward to that.
But yeah, I'm really
Can't wait
happy
to
about
see.
it.
Yeah, and
Sorry?
congratulations, and look forward to seeing it as soon as possible. We've got enough time to talk about dead water, if that's okay, and then a couple of questions at the end, and um,
Yeah, absolutely.
yeah.
Let me just go through. Just open the other one here. So it's impressive how these works are collaborating with people and kind of just embracing the experience of collaboration. It teaches us so much, doesn't it? And how the environments, how the place we are in, how they can teach us such a big amount of things. That's it's very like kind of lived experience opportunities, you know. And that water, I think, was one of the works that really kind of really taught me. I think all of the works teach me a lot because I really based my work in research as well. I mean, I make it, but I try to really create as I'm making it. And most of the time, previously to creating it, I have already like a foundation like of the context. So it makes me feel very comfortable about talking about the work in a kind of in a bigger picture as well. But of course, once I start making each work of that I develop, I research a lot and I start like reading loads of stuff, I've seen loads of stuff, so that I can really kind of create like a very strong foundation to be able to discuss it more in depth. But that water was a work that I created as well, like Open Fire. It started like it started. I knew already about the impact, the social and environmental impacts of dams, of dam and rivers before that. But the what prompted me to start to do the work was when in 2011, I think, the Belo Monte Dam to be built in the Xingu River in the Amazon, which was a crazy idea, was announced officially as something that would take place. Then, like Open Fire, I just look at that. I just stopped and said, I cannot just be watching this happening. I need to do something about that in my way, you know, as a visual artist and researcher. So I decided to go to the places where dams have been built already, where the Belo Dam was being built, and where dams, projects of dams would be happening in future time. So I really wanted to discuss, and I wanted to show these social and environmental damages and costs of the damming of the process of damming rivers for hydroelectric purposes. Uh, because I thought I know the damage and I know the costs and I know they are very, very kind of they are big, but I know that the riverside dwellers know much more than me. They're going to be the ones that are going to be able to explain this to everyone else better than me, much better than me. So I said, okay, so I'm going to go to those places and I'm going to meet these people that live by the rivers, live from the rivers. And I'm going to propose to them for us to create portraits of themselves in which they can interfere. They can co-direct them along with me, but with the purpose of telling their own stories to the others that are living far away from their realities. So this was my idea for that water. And then I approached the movement of people affected by dams, from which I have learned a lot as well about advocacy, about grassroots movements, and about struggles and for social and environmental justice when it comes to dams. And in Brazil, it's a grassroots movement which started in the 70s, 1970s, and they like do an amazing and an incredible job as a collective. So I approached them with my idea because I found that it was ethical and it was very important, vital for the work to work along with them, because they are the ones that have been in the struggle for such a long time. And I wanted to kind of use the work to kind of support them and their claims as well somehow. So yeah, we talked and I started the work in 2014, and it took like many years because it is a long term project. And the project like tell the stories of dams and rivers from the perspective of those who have been affected by those ventures in Brazil. But once more, I use Brazil to talk about like a big issue that has been happening all around the world, actually. And China and India and Turkey and the US faced these in the 50s. I mean, it's very contentious, and especially in Asia and in Latin America and in Africa as well. It's been a very problematic thing that has been happening in the latest in the later years, in the kind of last decade or last decades also actually now, because we've got things going on. And of course, with the climate crisis, hydropower became like kind of a good flag to stand for. And then I wanted to show this other perspective of the costs, because the costs were most intangible. And I said, okay, then photography will play its role in showing the intangible things, making them a bit more understandable for those who just understand numbers and charts, you know. We started this journey together, in which like I asked them to, we go for an interview, which I call an interview for research purposes, but is actually a conversation, like a long conversation. I go to the place, we talk about many things. They show me whatever they want and the way they want. And it's like kind of a very powerful conversation we have about their lives, what they've been facing, what they think about everything they've been facing, what they think about the place they live, past, present, future, and especially their feelings. So the portrait is based on their feelings, how you feel about that dam, specifically the dam that you've been subjected to. And to tell your story, these were my questions. To tell your story at the end of the conversation, I would say, to tell your story, this is a story you had just told me. What's the best way of doing these, transforming these into a portrait? And what place do you want us to have your portrait done at? And what kind of elements you can take to your portrait that can represent your feelings before that specific dam. So we would be working together to create these kind of rich and meaning portrait, you know, because it's not just about people sitting in front of the camera. They would go sit in front of the camera, plan about how to reach the place they wanted to be in for the photograph. Like, for instance, this place, for instance, we had to take like 1 hour boat trip from the place where they were currently living. They were affected by Belo Monte Dam in the Amazon, in the Xingu River, Deusilene and Maria das Graças. And they said, no, we want our portrait to be done in the backyard of our former home, which is partially submerged now by the Belo Monte Dam. It's in the middle of the river. It doesn't exist as such anymore. We used to have cashew trees in the background. You can see the cashew trees like all dead, of course, because they've been submerged by the water. And now that, as they said, like everything now there looks like desert. And it was like an Amazon forest vegetation before. And we had the cashews. We used to sell the cashews and to use the cashews for our own subsistence. Now we don't have anything like that. And you used to have beaches there as well. The beach, they call beach is the riverbank because it's very sandy in that area. So when the Amazon, it's very prominent the way that ebbs and lows go. Ebbs are really high and lows are really low. So in the lows, they would have the riverbank exposed, and all the communities that lived in the area, they would use it as like proper beaches. They call them beaches. So they lost this all. And they said, we want to acknowledge this, that our kind of, or our life, our way of being has been changed forever. So we planned, another participant had a boat and they said, I can take you guys to the place. So all this collaboration that would happen just behind the scene and to make the portrait happen was something that was so strong. And of course, being to those places and watching the river, the way the river would behave, the sounds of the riverbank, the sounds of the riverine, kind of, like the riparian vegetation, the animals, everything was the smell. I see like I can't even remember like each smell that I could experience when I was on this place working with these people in various remote areas of Brazil. They taught me a lot. So
incredible example of long form storytelling and giving space and time for others to feed in and for your process to work through as well alongside, to give room for others to collaborate and nuance the way of the image making and the narratives that come through as well. Really incredible.
Yeah, and for instance, these portrait, I asked her, like, I asked her to kind of, I asked her about the dam that would happen in future time. It was planned already to happen in the area where she lived. And I said, how do you feel about it? And then she said, like, hard to tell. I feel really angry. And I said, is there anything that could represent this anger? Because I was working with like transforming the feelings into an element that could be taken to the portrait itself. Then she said, like, fire, but my anger would be represented by fire. And then I said, okay, how do you want us to portray this fire with you in the portrait? And then she started. This was an amazing. Now see, like we exchange methods all the time. Like she's an incredible teacher, woman, amazing. And she decided to do her portrait in her parents' place, where she literally helped to build brick by brick. So she said, if the dam happens, it will submerge this place that I have helped to build brick by brick. And then she said, I'm gonna set the fire there at the back. She wanted to do the thing herself, which was beautiful. Like she set the fire. I was with my assistant there. While she did that, we set up the camera and all the organizing space for her to be able to use the fire in the way she wanted. But she started dancing with the fire in front of the camera. I didn't have to direct her to do anything. She did different poses and she started like putting on the ground and then kind of and said, no, I want more flames. And then she would go at the backyard, make more flames until eventually she looked at me and said, now I want you to photograph it in front of my face because this is my anger.
Wow.
Then it was beautiful. It was like
strong. Yeah, and it's like supporting her to channel obviously in the face of like the enormous weight of the politics and kind of the impossible kind of act of trying to divert or change that situation, but kind of feeling it imminently coming and yeah, being able to express herself with you through this process is yeah, really powerful.
So yeah, these people decided kind of they were trapped by the situation. They decided, okay, we decided as a family, they decided as a family to go with the fish net. They were fishermen, like fish, but yeah, they would fish, go fishing as well. They felt they were trapped. And then, so yeah, then of course we started like kind of as they started telling me their stories, I wanted to see the place that I couldn't see anymore because it was submerged because one of the places, the dam had happened like 50 years ago. So then I decided to ask them could you draw to me some of them one of them especially, or some of them that I knew that could draw well. I said, could you draw these places to me? Because I cannot see them myself anymore because they don't exist in reality, but they exist in your mind still. And then we used these, then I used maps of the plans. Then we started creating these kind of stitching together all these material that we brought from different sources and mainly from their own archives, personal archives to the narrative.
It's an incredible project. And if people want to see more about this, we're looking at your website now. So I think if people want to spend some slower time looking through and reading the stories and really going deeper into the work, we can share the link, or you can Google Marilena and or follow us on her takeover, and we've got a special page for you there, and you can kind of find your website and links, as well as the special page where you have the exhibition, the interactive exhibition um for open fire as well, and kind of go further into photo rituals for disappearance. Is that visible on your website now already? It's such a new work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All these three works you can find on my website. I think the best way to find my work is on my website
yeah,
because of political
really.
policies as well. I try to avoid Instagram to
Yeah.
show.
Fair enough.
I
We
prefer having
understand.
my own space with what I would say a fair policy for the ownership of my things,
Yeah,
and
completely
then social media.
appreciate.
But I appreciate the way the social media make us aware of many things is very important. But just I think the best way of finding my works in its fullness, and with, as you said, with time to kind of digest the ideas and to understand a bit, and having a look at the proposals that I make with through my work and through my different projects, and more in depth. It's my website, definitely.
Yeah. And I think we've covered so much with your projects and kind of delved into your working life as an artist, that we've covered pretty much most of the other questions that I was going to take us through. But I think something like a couple of things like insight into the artist, which we kind of love. We're all in multi-dimensional people, so a couple of kind of different types of questions. Just are you happy to share something that you do on a regular basis for your well-being?
What I do on a regular basis for my well-being.
Yeah.
Two things that I love so much, and without these things, I cannot survive. One is cycling in nature, like doing proper tracks, or even cycling in cities on Sundays, or even late at night, when I can really appreciate the city, and I don't need to worry too much about the traffic, but mostly like doing like proper tracks into nature. And the second thing is aerial acrobatics. I'm circus performer as well. So without
Incredible.
yeah, without my silks and hanging upside down and dropping, jumping, climbing my silks, I think I'm not myself. Yeah, my partner can tell this.
And you're able to practice in the area where you're living at the moment. Do you perform, or you do it for own enjoyment?
I've performed these weekend. We performed in London, and we had like a nice show for charity. And I perform in Brazil as well in circus. Where I go, my friends from circus, they say, well, how can you find places to practice everywhere you go? I go to Central America, and I find place. When I go to Spain, I find a place. Even like most remote place, I just arrive and say, okay, would you guys know about anyone that would be practicing? Because it's a very complicated thing to set up as well, because you need to
It's
hang.
not so straightforward, yeah.
Yeah, you need
No.
to hang the thing. It's not something that you just go to a kind of a square or like an abandoned space and you can do that. You need to have a proper equipment, a proper apparatus done. But I managed to, I don't know, the universe just connects us, doesn't it? So
Yeah.
I managed to find every place that I go, I managed to find. So far, I have managed to find people practicing the same thing, and we become very good friends.
It's another
Lady.
network to collaborate with. Well, that's a really incredible insight, and thank you so much for sharing your so much detail about your work. And we're very privileged to have you speak about it and join us as our wonderful digital artists in residence, and artists for our digital residency, and to be our Earth Photo Award winner this year. And we are super curious about how you move forward with your work, and look forward to following your practice. We've still got a short amount of time left for your residency as well, so we're going to share this video, and do keep following Marilene's work on her website, and all best with your future projects and the launch of your book. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Louise, for your words and for your care with this interview as well. Much appreciated. And thank Photoworks for this invitation again, for this opportunity. Yeah, and all my best wishes for Photoworks to carry on flourishing.
Thank you.